Hi, I'm Daniel Patterson, and you're listening to Gut Talks. GGUTT.
Oh, I feel I'm listening to the radio.
Good old compressor mic. Hopefully that sounded good. We base our decisions first and foremost on emotions, and then we justify it and rationalize it later on. And the more that we get to know about how humans operate, we can take that sense of not being manipulative. That's really important that we're not. We stay authentic through that, but understanding that we're working with people and building relationship with people is so important. And that will transcend even how much we're charging or how many offerings we have on our table. It's people that we learn to build and trust in that relationship. And that's what's going to help us win in our own spaces. And then the last point, which is what we mentioned earlier on again, is building authority in that space. So Maria, you're doing that right now by running a podcast and collaborating with, credible people. That's one way of building credibility and building your own authority in your space. And we can apply that as individuals and we can apply that as businesses or as brands. All the same thing, really, in this conversation. So in the brand strategy space, yes, fine. We've got to show up. We've got to be bold. We've got to be clear, not just about what we do, but actually how we can help your business specifically. And if I've got an offering and if I've started a conversation and my offering is adapted very specifically to your personal circumstances, well, then you're going to feel like listened to and you're going to feel importance and you're going to feel like you're not being sold to, but you're going to feel like there's somebody coming alongside to help solve your problems. So that's the emotional rapport. That conversation started because we were distinctively known in the branding space. And credibility comes perhaps when they do their research and look at, okay, who is this branding Dan, for example? Not necessarily how many followers do they have, but can we talk to some of their previous clients? What was the experience like? So we look for ways to build trust with people. And if we can get that trifecta in place, that's how we're going to, well, that's how we're going to build our business. And certainly it's absolutely adaptable for anyone listening as well to do that too.
Yeah, the reason I was asking this because I think I'm just taking the approach of, people who are building a brand or a business or a brand that is a business.
Sure.
Let's and people who are in the branding space in general, and because it's the word has been inflated, but that's like pretty much anything really. I had this conversation on a few other podcasts as well, and there is lots of experience that comes into play, and I still believe on the in the one-on-one, face-to-face approach, but weirdly enough, I also enjoyed the online approach that I learned how to work around during COVID. I built relationships. I mean, we've never met in person anyway, you and I.
No,
So
it feels like we have many times, Maria, but no, I don't think we have.
yeah, yeah, and this goes back to I think the way I was looking at this, the way I framed a question or a paragraph in that sense is more looking at younger designers who are just starting out and they want to sometimes burn the steps and are calling
Mm,
themselves brand strategist or doing strategy. It's very tough with
okay.
lack of business knowledge.
For sure.
Yeah, to get
Yeah.
there because there
Yeah.
are so many moving pieces that we
Yeah.
don't learn at university.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
even yeah.
It's interesting because if you were to consider the likes of the military,
Mhm.
uh, military strategists are some of the highest, levels of command, really. They're really high up, and usually they're the guys with decades of experience
Mhm.
who have been on the battlefield, who have experienced and seen hundreds of approaches to various situations. And they sit in the back room, not physically, maybe not anymore, but they would sit in the back room while there's a battle going on looking at what's going on, interpreting the specific situation locally, but on a grand scale as well, and adapting a very specific approach of command based on the hundreds of scenarios or thousands of scenarios that they've seen, experienced, read up on that are going to help them get to the best result. So, yes, I wouldn't use the term strategist lightly, because then you lose credibility very, very quickly. If you, as you said, if you haven't got the business acumen, if you haven't had the experience, and it's not something to be taken lightly at all. But the proof is also in the pudding,
Yeah.
is what I would often say. I mean, what is strategy in the first place? Really, what we're doing is we're planning. We are we are scoping. We are adapting a huge amount of resource to try and find and optimize the best possible way and most efficient way to reach our end goal with
Yeah.
the least amount of casualties. If you're looking at it from a military term, if you're looking at it from a business term, with the least amount of financial loss through that process, in order to increase profits, or in order to, increase staff morale, or whatever that goal might be. Here's a great example that we had with a client we worked with. We went through the workshop processes, the branding master plan, used that as a framework to uncover and discover and maneuver, our way through lots of conversations in order to develop a strategic approach for moving forward. And the company leadership of that particular business made some, together with us, we made some very strategic changes to how we're going to operate, the internal culture we were going to set for the first time in that business, who we were looking for, etc., etc. They brought that forward to their wider team, and nearly half of their team handed in the resignation that day. And
Wow.
I had the leadership team come back to me in tears, saying, "We've lost half of our staff. We don't know what to do. We don't know where to go." And my response to that was one of celebration,
Yeah.
which surprised them, and maybe surprises you if you're listening, thinking, "Oh, that's the most terrible thing that could have happened." No, it wasn't, because that internal staff weren't going to align with
Yeah.
how that team were strategically going to move forward. They were going to hold that company back from moving forward in the direction they wanted to move. They didn't need provoked. They weren't told, the people weren't told, if you don't get on board with this, you need to leave. They basically presented, said, "This is who we are as a company, as a brand, as a business. This is where we're going. We're going to need your support and your full support to get on board with this." And those that felt like, no, they didn't agree with it, couldn't get on board with it, left. It was one of the best results that company could have had, because now what it meant was they could go and recruit and build a team, and they had a framework in place when they were looking for people that they could bring who could align with their values, align with where the company's growing. And now, essentially, what they have is a business that's now 4 times stronger as a result. You know, but that doesn't come without a bit of experience, a bit of acumen, a bit of, a lot of experience, really, to
Yeah.
strategically suggest those sorts of things.
I mean, this leads us to another topic that needs time on its own, which is building trust and relationships with the customers who are willing to, I'm going to use this word, get naked while going through this whole process to get to results, achieve, and be willing to let go, because this is very tough as well.
This,
So,
I tell you what, this is something that's going to be really interesting. In the last couple of years, I have personally learned a lot more about how the human brain actually operates,
Mhm.
and understanding the different segments and sections of our brain, how we actually function as human beings. And we often think and operate in three different areas of our brain. And the first part of our brain, if it is not satisfied, it cannot move on to the next steps. And that first part of our brain is you might be aware of the part of our brain called the amygdala. It's right down by our brain stem,
Yeah.
and it's right down at the base of our brain. It's essentially our survival center. And if we as human beings don't feel safe and secure, we cannot move out of that part of our brain. It's the it's a space that when we're scared or we're afraid or we're extremely frustrated, we can quite easily dip into rage or extreme anxiety, and we cannot rationally think and get ourselves out of that place because we don't feel safe. And so that's got to be absolutely the first approach that we have when we're building businesses and connecting with other human beings, is understanding that these are human beings that we're working with. The first question that anyone will have, even if they're not thinking about it, is this a safe, is this going to be a safe relationship? Am I going to be taken care of? Is it low risk? If it's high risk, it doesn't feel safe.